I suppose I occupy a strange position in graphic design where I'm sort of on the edge of working with artists, with institutions, and working sort of within my own sort of practice. People often say to me that, oh, you're really lucky because you work with artists and you can, do what you want or something. But that's totally not the case. You're free in many ways because you can find an original solution, a creative original solution. But that solution has to fit to the work of the artist, and I think that's really important. For me, obviously, I look at the work that I've made and the books and the posters and the invites, and I would see to a certain degree them as my work or our work, the studio, but then I also am very conscious that it's the artist's work or it's the institution's printed matter. It's kind of everyone. It is a kind of joint effort. The world of art books and art publications has grown in the last 20 years. When I was a student, I always wanted to be like a record cover designer. People used to say, oh, I want to do record covers, and you didn't even know what an art book was, really. Now, most young people see art books as a sort of way of really expressing themselves. I studied typography at Reading University, and that at the time that was the only university course in typographic design. I suppose you get into lots of people. The person that I got into was a Dutch designer called William Sandberg. He was a designer, but he was primarily a museum director. So his designs would have been done, in the evenings after work on planes. Sometimes it's said that he might design things in meetings because he was so bored of all these meetings. So I suppose his design has a kind of very sort of personal feel. He used to tear paper. He used to talk about warm printing. He built a lot of texture into his work, and it definitely wasn't this sort of perfect, I suppose you would say, Swiss design. It was very playful, and he often used very low quality wrapping paper. It's definitely something I've been using in my work, is that I don't think you necessarily have to use the most expensive, luxurious material. Something that I've been interested in for a long time is designers and processes that maybe aren't part of graphic design history. Schmuck is a sort of magazine that I discovered relatively recently, only last year. It came out in the 70s. It was produced in, I think it was Devon, on a farm. It was, I suppose, an early example of making a magazine that everything could be in-house. So the designer was credited in the issue as being, the editor, the publisher, and the designer. And that meant that, if someone wanted to do a tip-in or a pull-out leaflet, and because the run was relatively low, 400 or 500 copies, it was possible to have pull-outs, stuck-in bits. Because the subject matter was primarily Fluxus and Malar, it became a good fit. About 2 years ago, I came across this amazing book that was called Art of the 60s. And it had such a sort of striking cover that had like 4 different bits. There was an acetate cover, there was a silkscreen bit, there was a see-through bit. I was like, who's the designer of this? I've never seen it before in my life. And hidden in the back, it says Voss Vostel. Turns out that he was quite a big artist. He was German. He was one of the pioneers of decollage, which is taking stuff away rather than adding stuff. I started just to sort of collect some of the books that he made, and I suppose what I'm really drawn to is the fact that he was an artist, but he also designed some books. Now, to me, that's quite interesting as a starting point. He wasn't just a graphic designer. And the design of his books, sometimes they weren't sort of perfectly done, but to me they get across his ideas. Recently, and maybe in the last couple of years, I've sort of felt the need sometimes to make something really perfect and maybe bring it home and roughen it up. I might often make bits and bobs on the weekends or at home, and then they just sort of get planted in my mind, and it might be relevant for a job 6 months down the line, or a year down the line, or 2 years down the line. But I think it's important to have that. It's almost like building up a kind of visual language that you can then apply to your work. Focal Point Gallery is a relatively small gallery in Southend. It was really during the previous director, Andy Hunt, time there that he really felt the need that printed matter could portray an image of the gallery and the institution. Because, okay, Southend, it's a small place, these regional galleries, often people, maybe might not go and see the show, but they can experience the show through the printed matter and through online. They're called satellite visitors. We put a lot of time, effort, blood, sweat and tears into the printed matter. And we always try and make something that is very tactile, that is like a gift. Maybe the information of actually what the show is can be really hidden. People always know it's from Focal Point Gallery because it sort of has this charm. I personally think it's not good enough to do an exhibition invite that is just an A5 card really with a picture on one side, text on the other, and just have that as information, because I think that you can do that by just sending an email. We're just doing a project at the Barbican at the moment, which is their latest exhibition, which is called Magnificent Obsessions, and it's all to do with artists who collect. Collecting, if you've got a lot of stuff, rather than a poster that was very minimal and very arty, I just thought, wouldn't it be really amazing to put everything on the poster? So usually you might say, oh, well, we can only put one image on a poster because it makes it clear and we concentrate on one thing. But our idea for the whole campaign is to put everything on everything. So our poster has like 80 images on it, and that's almost the concept of the whole show, and everything is just maximum rather than minimum. Teaching is quite an important part of what I do. It's definitely brought something back into my world that maybe I'd forgotten about. When you're doing teaching or doing projects, you have to be conscious of the fact that it might not work, it might go wrong, and I quite like the idea of being on the edge that it might be a total disaster. So one I did last year was just this notion of trying to break a world record for the largest type on an A4 sheet of paper. So with a small group of students, we chose a letter. It was at 12 point, and we used the facilities at Camberwell, i.e. a photocopier, and just keep on blowing it up to 100%. So it went from 12 point, it went to 24 point, it went to 48 point, went to 96 point, went to 192 point, and kept on getting bigger and bigger, and the students had to kind of join it back together in A4 sheets. And of course, what happens is, someone said to me, well, why don't you just print it out at 5,000 point and tile it together, which you could do. But to me, the process of blowing it up, the photocopier degrading the type, the idea that it doesn't always go to the edge, the photocopier, so there's a big white line and then that gets re-photocopied, so it has a kind of strange grid on it. Someone might put it in wrong, someone might get it out wrong, someone might press the wrong enlargement, so you get this kind of monster typeface. I think we got to about 12,000 points, and I really want someone else to break it. I really sort of challenge people to try and blow it up even more, to maybe get 20,000. I suppose now, in today's world, there's this sort of perfect sheen that is very possible because computers have made things look perfect. Modern day typefaces are brilliantly designed. You almost don't have to do anything to make a graphic design look quite good. I suppose the next stage is automation of design. People often talk about templates. Can you send me the template? And for me, that ultimately is slightly depressing because it means that everything is going to look like the same as the previous one because they're using a template. You can't send an idea template. You have to have the idea.